Alright, hey everyone, this is Ash. Welcome back to the King's Speech. Excuse me. So it has been a long time since I've done one of these. I can't even remember when the last time was. But I figured that since Wano has now almost officially ended, I think there's only one chapter maybe, one or two chapters at the most left before things wrap up and we're on to the next arc. New developments. I figured I might as well talk about this chapter, as well as a few ideas for upcoming projects and stuff I've gotten. But yeah, the reason I want to talk about this chapter specifically is there's just a lot of like story things in this that just annoyed the hell out of me, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit, just to kind of get it out there. So I'm going to try to keep this review relatively short because I just don't have the time or the patience to kind of get too in-depth into it. Initially, I was planning to write up like a whole script and analyze and everything, but I decided that was a waste of time, and I would rather just wing it, especially with regards to the longer term stuff I want to do anyway. So before I dive into the chapter, I'll just quickly cover that as well before we talk about this chapter specifically. So the two kind of mini projects I want to undertake in the hopefully next month while Oda's on break, One Piece is on break, now the Wano's ended. One is doing like a little recap summary of the events of the Wano arc. This is mostly because I've had like a couple of mutuals who are kind of debating whether or not to slog through 150 chapters to try to catch up with the series so they can follow on to the next arc. Now that the thing is over, because they've heard such mixed things about the arc overall, they figured, they're wondering if there was some kind of summary or wiki thing they could read to kind of just get a quick idea of what happened. So I figured since I was planning to do another analysis video anyway, I could probably rig up a quick summary thing of Wano, just laying out, key plot lines, characters, stuff like that. Just so that anyone that doesn't want to slog through 150 chapters can watch, a short video to kind of get the gist of what happened. So that's project number one. Project number two, like I said, is I want to do an analysis of Wano. So I want to, take a look at the arc, look at the characters, the themes, the ideas that Oda presented, discarded, things like that, and talk about like how effectively he utilized and presented them. Did he deliver on the themes he presented? Which ones didn't he deliver on? Like which ones, did he abandon? What mistakes he made? Things like that. Especially because if I want to do, like longer term analysis, things like that, I figured this would be a good kind of first stab at it. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm going to try, hopefully, to have that out before the One Piece break is up. So it's going to be, near mid or end of August. Hopefully by then I'll have it finished up. We'll see what that happens. With that, so I'm not going to do the other channel update stuff. If you want to know about that, either watch the last channel update video or just watch the Kaiju and Spy Family videos that kind of go over the channel stuff in the intros to both of those. So without further ado, we'll go into the One Piece chapter. I'm just going to go like how I used to when I do the reviews. I'm just going to go page to page and then kind of quickly talk about my thoughts. So yeah, let's quickly go over it. Cover page. I don't know. I feel like it doesn't make sense for Caesar to still be hiding out on Whole Cake Island after all this. Like it feels like he would have or should have gotten away earlier. I still think the government should have captured him, but I guess he's gonna reunite with Judge and like become part of Germa's science team, or they're gonna put exploding cuffs on him and he'll become their new slave. But whatever, I guess this is one of those loose end things where we just have to wrap it up and let people know where Caesar was. Nothing particularly interesting there. So the world government Elder Star stuff, I still say it's bullshit that they are just like, oh, Wano's not opening up the borders, like, oh, I guess we can't do anything, our hands are tied, oh no, like 2 emperors are down, this is gonna rock the world, but oh no, we can't do anything. Especially because I pointed out, like in multiple reviews, pointed out when the arc was ongoing, that one of these subplots that really went nowhere with regards to this is the fact that, Doflamingo and Kaido had a deal where Doflamingo manufactured Smiles, exchanged it for weapons that Kaido manufactured on Wano. Kaido gives it to Doflamingo. Doflamingo sells it on the black market to all these countries. We had a whole subplot of the revolutionaries being like, oh, these weapons are made of this rare metal that only comes from, some certain specific islands. If we find out where it's coming from, we can shut down production. And Blackbeard invaded the revolutionary headquarters. Like, he got his hands on these weapons. And the fact that Akainu like, oh, I've conscripted Marines to the force, and that they clashed with Blackbeard. I think they found some of the weapons. I have to go back and double check whether or not that actually happened. But the fact that they also found some of those weapons and also did not bother to survey it or find out like where they're coming from. It feels like, it feels a little bit bullshitty that Oda's just like, oh, no, like the government's just gonna be like, oh, hands off, or like, oh, we can't do anything. We're just like gonna not wrap up this plot point. That feels like something where it's like Oda had plans to address it somehow. Halfway through, he realized his plans were changed and have to move things around. So he decided, he's gonna have to just kind of be wishy-washy or just hand wave it away. But yeah, I don't know. Like I just don't buy it because it seems like the only reason that the Gandhi-looking elder guys like Wano will remain an unpregnable fortress is because they can't make it up the waterfall. But again, like the only thing that stopped the big mom pirates from like cresting the waterfall and actually getting to Wano was King, coming in, interrupting them, kicking them off. But the fact that Kaido's no longer a threat, the fact that his army is really no longer a threat to the Marines doesn't really make sense for them to be like, oh, I guess we can't, just strong arm them into opening their borders. Especially with the weapons. I think I'm sorry to go back to that, but the fact that Akainu conscripted an army, and the fact that, there's a whole subplot of like, there's a country with weapons manufacturing, that has this rare metal that they use in their weapons. The fact that he's not going to do anything with that information does not sit right with me at all. But honestly, again, it feels like Oda's just like, wants to put this plot on the back burner. So he's just having them go like, I will deal with it, whenever I deal with it, and so on. And then the next part of that being, okay, again, like a lot of people are speculating this way back when, I think even before Wano started, they're speculating like, oh, what if Robin gets kidnapped and taken to Marijoa, and that's how come? Because I think everyone was speculating we were going to get a Marijoa arc after this, where like if you find out that Sabo got captured or Vivi got captured, and then the Straw Hats would go and invade Marijoa and then go break them out. Maybe Robin would get captured, and that'd be the reason like they'd have to go chase after them, blah blah blah. And I've seen a lot of people with this chapter specifically being like, oh my god, I haven't seen Robin's entire chapter, like, oh, did CP0 actually capture her and take her away? It's like, alright, there's a lot of things to criticize about, like how blasé the Straw Hats have been regarding everything, and like how happy and joyful they are, like, with regards to circumstances. But the one thing I wouldn't buy is if Robin had been kidnapped and no one had seen her for a week, and they were just super chill about it, like, yeah, we'll just go have a bath, no big deal, we'll worry about it later, I'm sure, like, Robin's just somewhere. That would be kind of like a buck-wild development. It's like, oh, Robin got kidnapped by the government's tribes, like, it's chill, we'll take care of it, I'm sure it's fine, like, no, I don't think that's actually happened, because if Robin was not present in this chapter, I think it's like other people have speculated, she is more than likely just probably out there looking for the road poneglyph or translating something, because there was the one that Brooke found underneath the castle with the Kokeshi dolls, so I assume that's the one she went to go and check on and see like what it says and like translate and everything. So I don't know where people got this idea that thinking like, the threat of Robin being kidnapped is actually real. But I guess Oda is very, very good at apparently getting you to buy into a lot of bullshit, one of which we'll cover in a little bit here once we get to that. But Yeah, I don't think Robin's in any danger. I think she's fine. But yeah, next plot point. The signal being jammed, my initial thought was that this was Greenbull, because we see him at the end of the chapter, flying in on his little flower. And people have brought up, the old SBS Oda had where like someone basically insinuated like, hey, are Green Bull and Fujitora basically government rebels that don't really align with their values and are going to try to like, make trouble for them. I tried to play it off like the very, very bad, Luffy fake face played off with like I don't know what you're talking about. So, with regards to that, it would make sense that Green Bull's like interrupting CP0's bullshit and telling them, so that they can't get the rest of the government's orders, especially because Akainu was like, was having the whole confrontation with him before, where he's like, oh, with the Elder Stars being like, oh, why'd you tell me, blah, 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 why are you keeping information from me? That was my initial thought, especially with the, like, I'll be right there. I figured he was just flying in. But then after I reread this again, the next chapter gave me maybe the Drake is the one that's signaling or cutting off the communications, because he has been on the island and we don't know where he's been or gone during that week, and the fact that he's part of SWORD, who functions or operates within the government. So maybe because they're potentially opposite to, because CP0 is the the Aegis Zero is the shield of the Celestial Dragon, so it makes sense that SWORD is kind of like their counterbalancing or opposing force, like they're basically trying to interrupt or stop whatever CP0's goals are there. They're doing the opposite, so we'll see if that's what it turns out to be. It's either going to be one of those two, unless, some surprise other character we don't learn about, whatever. But now we get to, like, the first thing that really actually annoyed and pissed me off this chapter. And that's the little spiel, like, little conversation Drake and Hawkins have, where Hawkins is like, fucking Hawkins. Drake is like, oh, I thought your fortune telling said, someone would, so there's only one person with 1% chance of survival. And your cards told you as long as you aligned with Kaido, you'd be fine. And Hawkins is like, oh, my pride wouldn't let me betray Kaido again and go crawling back to Kid. And the 1% person I was talking about was actually me, Dio. Like, because the reason it annoys me so goddamn much is I can't even say it's a red herring. Like, it's just a complete and utter misdirection that Oda put in to try and make himself seem smarter than his readers, to be like, I tricked you. You thought he's talking about, Luffy when he got smacked down by Kaido, that he was the one with the 1% chance. Like, oh, I tricked you, but oh, look at me. I'm so clever. I'm being so subversive. Like, oh, look, it was actually Hawkins talking about himself this entire time. That's the one thing I've never really liked about Oda, and like the one comment of his where like actively made me respect him less is when he's been like, oh, if anyone ever guesses any of the plot points in One Piece, then I have to change it, because if someone guesses it, that means it's not surprising anymore, and if it's not surprising, then it's not good storytelling, and I want my readers to be surprised. Like, surprises for the sake of surprises are not good storytelling. And it's a very, very juvenile way of thinking about your readers, to be like, oh, I'm going to pull a fast one on them by misdirecting them, and then at the very end being like, ha ha, pie on your face, I'm smarter than you. It's like, bitch, of course you're the one telling the story. So of course, if you deliberately misdirect your readers, of course they're not going to know and be able to figure out when you do dumb shit like, oh, Hawkins' pride wouldn't let him do blah, blah, blah. Like, it doesn't really make sense with the character we've seen. Like, because as he said, like, when Kaido came down to him and was like, gave him the ultimatum of join my crew or die, Hawkins is just like, rolled over on his back and he's like, I surrender, I'll join you. No big deal. And then for him to turn around and be like, oh, well, when I saw that my odds were changing, I just couldn't, betray someone else again. Like, it does not match with the character and his motivations and his actions up to that point. And like I said, like it's such, looking back on now, it's like it's such an obvious misdirect from Oda. He wanted to make it seem like, oh, the raid's gonna be so dangerous, like, oh, the Straw Hats are facing long odds. But he doesn't actually want to commit to any of that. Like he just wants to look clever without actually being clever. And that, it just fucking annoyed me so much. Like there's so many better things you could do than this. You know, try to stroke your massive ego with this bullshit. But oh, it just annoyed the hell out of me. Again, like the whole like, oh, we're teaching the true history stuff. Like, all right, so the other thing that annoyed me, like, all right, we're skipping a week ahead. Like, we had basically no catharsis from the last chapter. Like, there's no chance of like seeing like, you know, the Wano citizens kind of like rejoicing that Kaido's done. You know, samurai like grieving their losses and like the sacrifices that it took to, you know, to take down Kaido and protect the citizens and everything. Like we're just skipping straight ahead to like, oh no, everything's good now. You know, don't worry about it. Everything's fine. Everyone just got over it really quick. You know, we're all good now. Wano's peaceful and prosperous under, you know, Shogun Momonosuke and all that. Like, it's such, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, like, the only word I can think of is like, it's very, very abrupt, like, just being like, alright, we're done. It'd be like after the end of Thriller Bark, you just skip to a week ahead and it's like, alright, you know, we're done. Like, no more resting or stuff, we're done, the arc's over. You know, everything's already been wrapped up, we're good to go. Like, it just feels very abrupt. And I don't know if this, especially with Oda's recent comment, you know, saying that, oh, he's trying to streamline the ending of the arc, you know, try to make it move along faster. Given that he has had a bunch of health issues pop up in recent years with his doctors telling him, like, you know, you really have to take better care of yourself, you know, you have to reduce your hours and giving him more breaks, you know, they're telling him to walk, exercise, things like that. I wonder, given like how hard he already pushes himself, like the lack of sleep, the overwork, everything else, I wonder if he has been getting used to like, hey, your health started to decline again, like you really, really need to take a break, you need to slow down, you know, or else you're not gonna, or else, you know, you're gonna cut your life short. And I wonder if that's what's causing him to kind of like want to be like, I want to wrap this up quickly because I want to be able to tell the story and then retire. Like I don't want to have something happen to me that would stop me from finishing the story. So I wonder if that's what's been happening with some new development has happened with regards to that. It also could just be a case, like, I mean, it also could just be a case of like, you know, he's just kind of like, he's also tired of this arc and like all the missteps he's made and kind of just wants to wash his hands clean and start with a new slate on a fresh new arc. And that's why he's kind of, you know, rushing through everything. I'd say it's odds or even it's a bit of column A, a bit of column B, but who really knows? I'm not even gonna comment on the Joy Boy crap. This comes to the other like annoying thing because, all right, so we've officially now since like I think the first time since Marineford, not counting, you know, Monet or Virgo or Pedro, who I still don't buy, is alive. You could potentially say Yasue like is probably the first actual canon death we've had since Ace's death at Marineford. You know, oh, literally over 500 chapters ago now. But the actual like first canonically like, you know, Word of God deaths we've gotten in the series are two characters. Out of all the theories, speculation, everything that anyone's tossed out, I don't think anyone suspected that Ashura Doji and Izo would be the characters that, you know, perished during the raid. Ashura, I guess you could kind of write off, because, you know, he did the whole, like, explosion thing, fell off. Like, at least a little bit more believable. Izo, it didn't seem like he really took a fatal enough blow that, you know, would have knocked him out and killed him. And this very much reads like Oda's like, oh, I have to, you know, give this arc some impact. I have to kill some characters off. Who are the least important characters, like least memorable of the scabbards I can kill off? Like, you know, the most forgettable ones. It's like, all right, I'll go with the pink-haired bandit guy that abandoned Odette and no one really knows anything about, and Izo, because, you know, he's a white-beard pirate that was basically in the background for most of the arc, and then just decided to tie him into Wano because he has a whole samurai theme going. But I think there's a twofold problem to it. Like, one is the way he delivered the death news, like just having Kawamatsu and Kinemon just having like a casual like tea conversation, just being like talking as if they're talking about the weather, being like, yeah, we should probably build a temple for those dead guys, huh? Yeah, we should probably do it to honor them, huh? It's like, yeah, it's really hard. Like, it again, it just feels so abrupt. It doesn't feel like it has the weight it deserves for this arc. And combined with the fact that Oda has done so many death fake outs in this arc, especially with Kinemon, who's like, the whole stabbed in half thing, and with Kiku losing an arm. I think it's the case of the boy who cried wolf, where people just could not buy into the fact, death was ever going to be a possibility in the series. And then Oda kind of just shoehorning it into the chapter kind of just lessened its impact even more. And I think one of the problems with discussing death in the series, I think a lot of fans, because when people were criticizing and saying, Oda needs to have death, I think a lot of fans were just thinking like, as long as he introduces death, that's fine, that's all that matters, and then you can't criticize him anymore. But if your death isn't meaningful or impactful, you might as well not have had it at all, because it really doesn't add anything to the story. But again, that's something I want to like talk about more thematically when I do the Wano analysis, because that's just been badly mishandled throughout this entire arc. But yeah, that was just like, of all the things, like, I cannot believe that the first time we get a canonical confirmed death after Ace was with Izo and Ashura, and not like Kaido, whose entire thing was, I want to die a glorious death. Because we still haven't got confirmation of like what happened to Kaido and Big Mom. It's like, they fell into the lava, and people just seem to be like, okay, I guess they're just dead now, alright. Same with Orochi. I completely forgot, but Orochi, I guess, is just confirmed canonically dead now, because no one's talked about him. No one talked about like what happened to us. I guess he's just dead. And then again, when I talk about like impactful stuff, like again, Momo being aged up, being met with like a non-reaction, people being like, oh, he's aged up now, okay, I guess. Again, like, it doesn't feel like an impactful sacrifice when everyone's just kind of blasé about it. They're like, oh, I guess Momo is aged up. Okay, cool. He lost 20 years of his life. He's an 8-year-old stuck in a 20-year-old's body. That isn't, frightening or, perverse in any way at all. I'm sure it's fine. Like, especially with the jokes like, oh, ha, well, you're an adult now. Like, let's see how well you can take a punch. Your body's really sturdy now, huh? And like, now he's just punching him away because he's trying to be a perv now. And Brooke and Sanji be like, oh, you're an adult now. You've lost all your kid privileges. Like, I don't know, like, they faced 2 emperors of the sea, yet it doesn't, don't feel the impact of any of that. Like, the impact of the sacrifices does not come through with how the Straw Hats are reacting to the post-battle stuff, like the post-arc stuff, like all the things that happened during it. Like, it feels like, they're being like, yeah, same shit, different day kind of attitudes, which really kind of dulls and lessens the impact. But that is what it is. And then, it's already going longer than I wanted to. So I'll quickly just touch on the bat stuff before wrapping this up. So I'm going to be the big downer on this, because I've seen a lot of people kind of celebrating, like, oh, can't believe Oda dropped this during, Pride Month. So I was like, oh, he said trans rights. But on the one hand, I totally understand why people are celebrating this so much, and like, why they're lauding it and like talking about it and everything. Because yes, like, with the bat scene, like, Oda's canonically confirmed that, Yamato identifies as a man, Kiku is a woman, You know, that's what they are. So all the bigots that have been saying otherwise, you know, you can go and shove it now, because this is canonically confirmed. You can't do anything about it. And I think a lot of people appreciate the fact that Oda did this, because I don't think they actually expected him to even go this far, given his track record with, you know, LGBT representation in the series. So in that regard, like, yeah, I understand how it's such a big step for him to, you know, canonically confirm, like, you know, yes, these two trans people introduced in this arc, they're being treated respectfully, you know, been affirming their identities. Well, at least for Kiku, Yamato's a little bit more suspect with regards to that, but the conversation for that is neither here nor there. But I don't know, to me, it's like, while I understand, you know, like the impact and like the meaningfulness of seeing, you know, one of the biggest authors in Shonen Jump doing something like this, it also feels like, you know, the absolute bare minimum of what Oda should be doing for this series, you know, like, and it feels like in the fact we're celebrating so much, like, we're like, oh yeah, it's like, you know, so great, oh my god, blah, blah, given that, you know, it took him 1,052 chapters to get to this point. Like, I don't know if that's really worth celebrating that much, especially because, again, like, the big question, like, kind of the cloud hanging over my head is the question of, all right, does this mean that Oda's not going to be transphobic anymore going forward? Like, is he going to stop with the transphobic Sanji gags where, you know, when he sees someone from Peachy Island, he's going to, like, you know, throw up and be like, oh my god, oh, hey, people are disgusting, blah, blah, blah. Is he going to have, you know, the other Okama stop being stereotypes? Is he going to stop, you know, making them look and act ridiculous? Like, is he going to tone down on those gigs? Because if he isn't, then, you know, then having like this one scene, like in the grand scheme of things, isn't really a lot or doing much. But, you know, that's just my opinion. I don't want to take away from anyone's kind of like happiness from it, but I feel like, you know, we also got to kind of put it in the larger perspective as well. But yeah, especially with Yamato, I feel like there needs to be a lot more nuanced discussion with regards to him, because I do feel like Oda has not done a good job with his characterization or his arc. Like, he went from when he was introduced being like one of the characters I want to know the most about to a character where I was just like, you know what, I absolutely just do not care about this bland, one-dimensional, you know, character. And that's a little bit disappointing for me, because I had so many hopes and expectations for him that you don't live up to. But again, that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, I'm not really going to comment on the bounty stuff, because honestly, at this point, I don't think the bounties are in any way meaningful for anything. Like, it's, yeah, sure, there's hype around it, because it's like, oh, you know, we see big, big numbers, and it's like, oh, yeah, you know, big numbers, oh, yeah, it's so great. But, again, I feel like we've crossed the threshold where it actually contributes anything meaningful with regards to, you know, storytelling, power scaling, any kind of nuance at all. So it's kind of like, whatever, sure, we'll get the numbers, but don't really care. As for Green Bull, yeah, I expect he's going to be like Fujitora. I think a lot of people have theorized since the beginning that he's basically going to, like, you know, do a mass green eruption on Wano, so he's going to, like, restore the flowers and greenery and, like, restore the land back to where it was before he leaves. So I'm not really expecting, you know, a big confrontational thing. As people have pointed out, at this point, the Straw Hats and their alliance have taken down 2 emperors, so a single admiral showing up isn't really, like, much of a threat at this point in the story, especially since both Luffy and Zoro have pretty much recovered from their ordeal, so, like, there's no real threat that Green Bull can pose to them. It's kind of like, alright, I guess we'll get, you know, his characterization and stuff, but impact-wise, not so much. Yeah, so with that said, Thank you all for tuning in. I know it's been a while since I've done one of these videos where I really need to get a little bit of a rant out. Like I said, wasn't diving into this too deep thematically. I'll hopefully have a longer video out sometime next month, diving into it, talking about it, like tying things together, digging into them a little deeper. But I think I do appreciate the fact that I'm not the only one this time that feels like, it's too abrupt and rushed an ending. I've seen even long time. Stans also acknowledged the fact that it's been, a super rushed arc. So that was very validating. But yeah, like I said, hopefully I will have both the summary and the analysis out sometime the next month before the series finishes its break. So look forward to that. Like I said, read-throughs for next week will probably be Lazarus and Monstrous. Watch my Kaiju and Spy Family videos for more information with regards to that. But yeah, as always, if you like my content, please do like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until next time, this is Ash. Talk to you all later.